Welcome to today's edition of the Contessa's Book Corner. Today we're going to be looking at 5 books that I consider essential for 15th century Italian fashion. Let's get to the corner. First book in our series, Dressing Renaissance Florence by Carole Collier Frick. So she is, actually I have to admit I know nothing about her as a person, but her credentials are excellent and she has actually done quite an amazing amount of research for this book. Dressing Renaissance Florence is not going to be a tailor's guide. I'll do a separate series for tailoring specifically. This is going to help you understand the correct materials, the correct colors that were available, the combinations, the cost, how clothes were constructed, in what circumstances they were constructed. She provides some imagery, but it's black and white, as you can see here. So it isn't the best in terms of detail on the pictures. There are better sources for that. Cover that in another book corner. But what is important are the documentary, is our noun-verb agreement? I don't know. Documentary evidence that she provides. Really critical. She delves into wills, she delves into trousseau accounts, she delves into household accounts, she delves into merchants' records. So you get a holistic picture of clothing and fashion in this period. She also provides, and this is really handy, as you can see here, she provides a fantastic glossary of 15th century Italian dance terms and definitions for them. I don't necessarily agree with her very strictly defined terms. I think there was probably some more flexibility about how words were used, similar to the flexibility of words used today for clothing. But still, a great way to demystify 15th century fashion, absolutely essential. Our next book this is really sort of the Bible of 15th century Italian fashion. And this is Jacqueline Herald's Renaissance Dress in Italy, 1400 to 1500. I know how to read dates. Unlike Dressing Renaissance Florence, which obviously from its name focused on Florence, this covers multiple regions of Italy. Now, most of her time, she focuses really heavily on the first half of the 15th century. So if you're more interested in the latter half of the 16th century, this isn't as useful. But nevertheless, super rich in detail, covers fabrics, provides lots of primary source evidence to help inform the idea and concept of dress, and it has fantastic appendices. For example, you can see here, extracts from accounts, translations of letters describing fashion or fabric that was given from a prince to his courtiers as sort of a reward for being loyal courtiers. I want to be wealthy enough to give my people expensive fabric as a reward for being loyal courtiers. Life goals, Contessa. So I do absolutely recommend this book. It is not really in print as far as I'm aware, and so it is only available used, and of course being limited, it is generally very expensive, $200 or more. But if you keep your eye on the various book markets, you might look out and find a more inexpensive copy. However, it is worth the money, and once you own it, just never let it go. That being said, you can no doubt get this through your local library interlibrary loan program and at least have a look through and maybe photocopy the relevant passages that you need. Shh, I did not just suggest that. Our next book, also not a tailoring guide, but a translation of a fantastic primary source. And this will really give you a window into not just the clothing, but the jewelry and actually all the accoutrements of daily life in the 15th century. The book is called Lorenzo de' Medici at Home. And this is a translation of an inventory that was taken of his palazzo upon his death in 1494. Apparently, the Medici were hoarders. because this inventory literally walks you through the palace, room by room, closet by closet. It feels very invasive and just absolutely scintillating to be poking through the cupboards and closets of this great Renaissance prince. This goes into super duper detail about the garments by name, the colors of the garments, the fabric of the garment, whether they were lined or not, and their value. So there's all these little pieces of paper here represent somewhere where I found mentions of clothing, and there's quite a few. And that includes both men's and women's clothing, because this documented everything, and I mean everything, that was contained in the palazzo upon his death. So his wife's clothing, his in-laws' clothing, his servants' clothing, any other relatives, female, male, didn't matter, all there. So I absolutely recommend Lorenzo de' Medici at home. It is in print. It is very inexpensive. Go to Barnes & Noble's website and get yourself a copy. So this next one is a lot morbid because for the last, 100 years, in Italy, they've been doing reconstruction work on churches, which involves their crypts, which involves opening tombs. And what they're finding, happily for us, is a lot of corpses in funerary garments. And by funerary, I mean normal everyday clothes in which they were interred. And those clothes have mostly survived. So that brings us to Redire, this year in Italian, 1427 to 2009. My number's in Italian. No. Ritorno alla luce, return to the light. This is the restoration of the farsetto of Pandolfo III Malatesti. He was a powerful condottiero from a powerful family of condottieri in the Campania region of Italy, I believe. And they opened his tomb and they found this, really morbid. And you look at that and you say, who would look at that and say, look at that fantastic clothing? But once they extracted the clothing, they found this. Once it was cleaned and laid out. Perfect and beautiful. So this book features all sorts of detailed close-up pictures of the pieces of this farsetto. So much that you can see stitches, like you can see here. You can see the pattern of the fabric here. So this was a red velvet, silk velvet farsetto. And as is often the case, the back pieces didn't survive so well because people tend to be interred on their back. And I'll quote the direct translation from the Italian: the bodily juices damage the fabric. I just call it like I read it. I don't have to make this stuff up. Anyway, I highly recommend this book. You might be able to find it online. It's published by the Commune di Fano, assessorato alla cultura. So I guess Fano is the municipality, and probably where he was interred, I'm assuming. Highly, highly recommend this book. It was given to me, so maybe you can find someone to give it to you. Or if you go on vacation in Italy, make sure you go to Fano and go to the museum and see if you can pick up a copy. Must have. Our last entry in today's book corner also relates to extant garments and their details. Structuring Fashion is a book published by the Bayerisches Nationalmuseum, the Bavarian National Museum, which is called that because once upon a time Bavaria was a kingdom and they had their own national museum. It's in Munich. They have a large textile collection, and this book specifically focuses on garments that help structure the body. So it actually doesn't go back that far in terms of time. It only goes back to the 15th century, but as you can see here, there are detailed pictures in this book of foundational garments that are essential for 15th century fashion. This, for instance, is the bra dress that was found in the walls of Langberg Castle when they started restoring them. They found thousands of extant textile fragments, some of which were mostly intact. So we actually now know how women could have and sometimes did support their breasts in the 15th century. And you can actually get construction details from that in this work. Also, more importantly, there are detailed photos of an extant gamora, the foundational garment. So basically this green dress that I'm wearing under here. They found an extant one that was preserved in a treasury because it belonged to the Blessed Osana. She was not a saint because she was blessed, but she was basically considered a saint locally. And so when she died in 1505, her garments were treated like relics. Unfortunately, that means they cut up the skirt of the dress and handed pieces out to deserving individuals. But fortunately, they preserved the bodice and the upper parts of the skirt. And as you can see here, those pictures are portrayed in this book, but also there's some description details about the construction methods, the techniques, the stitches used. So you actually can get an idea of how these dresses were actually assembled based on an extant garment. So I really do recommend Structuring Faction for your collection. Also available from Barnes & Noble. And no, I am sadly not getting any money from them, but I'm boycotting Amazon because of how awfully they treat their employees. So I try to get my books from anywhere else before I get them from Amazon, and you should too. Okay, enough soapboxing. This has been your edition of the Creative Contessa's Book Corner. If you enjoyed today's little video, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you wish to support my efforts more directly, please do become a patron on Patreon. Happy reading!